as I'm sure won't surprise anyone in this chamber, I rise in support of this bill, and also to applaud the gentlelady from Worcester for her longtime leadership on this issue. And in particular, I appreciate her attention to the more subtle issue of backdoor quarries and including the address of that in this bill. And I also have been proud to join the team of people pushing and shoving to get this bill through this chamber over the past few years. And we're proud to recognize that the Senate did actually pass like legislation last session. And we're back again to do it this year to make sure it gets all the way to the governor's desk. So I'm proud to be supporting passage of this bill again today. I also want to rise to address some of the question that was posed by the gentleman from Cape Ann earlier about why not do a smaller size version of this reform? Why not lessen the penalties rather than take them away altogether? And there's several answers to that question. First, we've invoked a few old saws and truisms in this debate already. I'll add one more: let the punishment fit the crime. As has been mentioned, and it bears repeating, the crimes that we're talking about are crimes that have nothing to do with the safe operation of a motor vehicle. And so there's a mismatch that we've recognized over the years between taking away someone's license to operate a vehicle when the crime for which that penalty is being levied had nothing to do with the safe operation of a vehicle in the first place. There is simply no evidence that suspending a driver's license for a drug offense unrelated to the operation of a vehicle is a deterrent to such drug crimes. An average, and we've heard this before, again, 7,000 people in our Commonwealth lose their licenses every year due to the current law. And that brings me to another argument about why we should revoke this erroneous statute, this ill-conceived statute, rather than simply tweak it. And often in this chamber, my colleagues have heard me talk about my father's history, my father's journey in this country, and lessons that has imparted to me as a legislator. I'm going to invoke a little bit of wisdom from my mom's side of the family. She grew up in the West, a cowgirl, and it used to be in the Old West that stealing a man's or a woman's horse, for that matter, was a capital offense. And that was because taking away a person's horse was tantamount, it was a virtual death sentence for them. Eliminated their ability to get around in ways that were fundamental to their ability to carry out life. Today, of course, a man's horse is his car or her car. In some communities, we're fortunate enough to have public transportation, but even in my district, relatively speaking, a public transportation-rich district, many of my constituents don't have access to that public transportation to meet the fundamentals of life: work, getting family and self to medical appointments, grocery shopping, you name it. So some communities in our Commonwealth are bearing a much more heavy load of this penalty of taking away of one's proverbial horse. Although Black and Latino Bay Staters make up less than 20% of the total state population, they make up 44% of those convicted of the crimes that triggered these suspensions, even though they are statistically no more likely to use drugs than their white counterparts. I'm going to say that again, Mr. President, because it's important. It's important to why we should rid our statute of this ill-conceived law in the first place rather than simply tweaking it. 20% of our state's population, less than 20%, made up of Black and Latino residents. 44% of those convicted of drug crimes are in those categories, even though they are no more likely to actually use drugs than their white counterparts. In my own district, I have heard from many constituents who have struggled to get back on their feet after a drug conviction. The arbitrary burden of losing a license, in addition to the penalties that already come with a drug conviction, prevents those who are re-entering communities from fully participating in the economic stabilization of their families. We want people